Hey everybody, today I'm going to be helping my buddy install this Viofo A129 Pro Duo 4K dual channel dash cam on his sweet freaking Jeep Gladiator. So let's take a quick look at the camera itself. If you're familiar with other Viofo cameras in the A129 line, this looks exactly the same, right? We have our front camera unit with the rotatable lens. You have your back camera unit, which is same thing, same capabilities, and just looking at it you would never know really which one is what, but the 129 Pro does say 4K UHD on there, so that is one way to kind of tell. Then you have your USB power and your 12-volt adapter. They include another USB cable, some nice handy clips. These are really nice. I frequently scavenge these from other Viofo kits that I've installed and use them in other installations. They include a little trim tool, and this one's actually pretty good. It's got a decent amount of rigidity to it, so it doesn't just like snap on you when you're trying to use it. And I've done entire installs just using what's included, so that's really nice as well. You have your extra sticky pads in case you want to change up your mounts, a little memory card reader, documentation, and then over on the right side we have the rear camera cable, which is nice and long. And then we also purchased the Hardwire cable because we want this camera to use parking mode and also turn on and off with the vehicle. So one of the other really cool features about this A129 Pro Duo is on the side here it has this AV port, and so what you can do, since this Jeep has a center screen that accepts external video inputs, is you can actually output the video from this camera to that center screen. So my buddy's thinking about maybe using this as a trail cam sometimes to look over the front. Now obviously it's not going to be as good as a real trail cam that's mounted right on the bumper and you can see right in front of the vehicle, but it should still be better than sitting in the seat. So unlike normal vehicles, the Jeep Gladiator and just the regular Jeep have some interesting features in that, well, if we look up here, the roof is removable, and also in addition to that, the windshield folds down. So compared to normal cars, we're going to have to think differently about how we mount the cameras and how we run the wires. So we'll start by plugging in the 12-volt adapter into the car's port so that we can power the dash cam. Then we can go ahead and plug that into the USB power port on the camera. And then also don't forget to take the lens protector off because we're going to want to see what we're looking at. Okay, so since the windshield can fold down, it doesn't make sense for us to mount it onto the windshield like we typically would, because then, well, if you folded it down, your camera would be stuck out there and wouldn't be usable. But however, this upper trim right here, this is fixed. So I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to mount the camera right here to this trim. That way, the camera can be used even if the windshield is folded down. So we'll go ahead and turn the car to accessory mode. The camera will turn on. It'll give you a bunch of beeping noises because I don't have a memory card in there right now and it's not really initialized or set up. But what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to look at the screen here so we can see where the camera is pointing. We don't want to mount a camera without knowing what we're actually looking at. So that's the reason why we want to power it up first right here. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of put it up in this area, rotate this lens up, down as I need to, and just get this set up and before I start peeling off the red backer to permanently affix it. And so I'm actually really glad that I decided to mock this up before, because what I realized doing that is the angle of this piece is actually angled upwards a little bit, and so if I were to put the camera in this location, the lens actually can't rotate down enough to see the hood. So it looks like instead of mounting it here like I originally thought I might do, I'm gonna have to mount it a little bit further back on this part of the trim because that's angled downwards. So if I put it over here, then the lens can easily see the front of the car and it's not looking up into the horizon. And also, since a lot of these wires come out on this right side here, I think it actually makes a little bit more sense for me to move the mounting location over to the driver's side, even though normally I would mount this on the passenger side, so it's a little bit more invisible. But in this case, on this Jeep Gladiator, this mounting location just makes more sense. Okay, so I have the two cables, right? One is for the rear camera, one is for the power, and I'm going to route them just kind of around this outside part of the mirror. And what I'll probably do is I'll grab one of those cable clips that came with the kit to secure the wires here. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed them up into this trim up here, and you can see it's springing back. This trim actually will hold the wires pretty decently, and you'll want to try and push them back as far as you can, and then you know, just tuck them in there, and then they'll get held pretty well. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to feed them all along the length over here till we get to the A pillar. When we get to the edge here, we'll want to pop off this cover on the handle here, so you can just use that included pry tool, the camera, pop that off, and then that will reveal this 10mm bolt that we can remove. And what removing that bolt does is it'll let us pull this and flex it right here so that we can pass those cables to the outside of the trim. On the bottom of the handle is another cover that we can remove with the pry tool, and another 10mm bolt that we'll remove. So now what we can do is we can take our wires on the inside of the A pillar and you know, go ahead and grab that grab handle, pull it down to expand, you know, this seam right here. You can also use this trim pry tool as well to help yourself feed the wire into the groove here. Get it up and over this corner piece. I'll pull this down so I can get that wire back there. Then I'm going to feed it over here into this next seam or channel, and then this will let me route it to the outside of the car. And once you get to the outside of the car here, you can go ahead and pull on it and get it taut, because you know, we've obviously used this a good amount of length going through all here, but really it's just going to make a straight line from this section all the way to the outside. So, you know, reach around the front here, make sure it gets over any you know, little plastic clips or anything like that, and gets routed and is nice and taut to the outside. Now that we have these wires on the outside, I want the rear camera cable to be on top, because we're going to feed this, you know, backwards to go towards the back of the car, and the Hardwire or power cable, I want to feed that down the weather stripping here towards the floor. So I can go ahead and, you know, I can pull this, you know, grabbing that handle, I can pull it and make some space so I can tuck this wire in there. And then, you know, you can also use your trim tool to kind of make sure it's pushed in. So I'm just going to go ahead and feed this wire in and work my way down. So when we get to the junction between the handle part and this dash, it's going to be the same story. We're just going to pull back the trim over here on the side, feed the wire in behind it. But when we get to this next panel over here, the side panel, we're actually going to take this off. And so let me see if I can do this with the camera in the way. What we'll do is you take your trim tool, get in here, and go ahead and pop the clips. And there's a bunch of them around the sides, all along the periphery. And then we can go ahead and take this out. It's a little bit tight at the bottom, so you probably have to bend the dash back in order to get enough clearance to really get this last clip released. Then we'll go ahead and, you know, just get the wire behind there, and then at the bottom where there's this groove between another lower kick panel piece and the dash, just go ahead and put the wire in there in that groove to hold it for a second. And then we can go ahead and put that side panel back on. Make sure you push all the clips in securely. Now we're in the footwell, and we'll go ahead and drag that wire through this groove over to the inside. Now you can see that there's this little wire up here, and we kind of want to go on the inside of that like I've done. And so to do that, you just pull this cover out and off. So pull it out, right? That'll give you all the clearance you need to get up and around that. Okay, so next I'm going to remove the glove box, so, you know, go ahead and unlatch it there. So here is the rod that slots into the glove box. You can see the key for it right there. So you just have to, once again, pop that out of this little slot here, and then the rod just simply pulls right out. And then at the back here, you can see there's a stop for the glove box, right? So you can see it stops against this piece. So you just have to lift this up so you can pull this under it to fully lower the glove box. And then once that's all done, you can see we can just simply pull the box off. So if your Jeep was optioned with the aux switches and they're active, which, come on, you ordered a Jeep, it should be. We're going to look underneath the push passenger footwell, and you can see right where that footwell light is, there's a cable harness with some tape around it. And if we cut that tape all away, we have these wires with heat shrinked leads, and these go to the aux switches. So here's the end of the harness, and you can see I've kind of separated out two wires, a red and white one, which should be constant power on, and a pink and orange one, which should be ignition on. So I'm going to grab my multimeter and just double check to make sure that these are actually what I think they are. All right, so I just used my multimeter to check, and you know, I placed one lead on the wire here, and the other lead I placed on one of these screws for ground. And yep, you know, these are just as we thought. So red and white is constant on, and your pink and orange is accessory on. Now we'll work on tapping into the power on the auxiliary harness here. So you know, on the Hardwire kit for the Viofo, you know, they've nicely labeled everything. So black is ground, your yellow is ACC or accessory power, and then your red has a label that says battery, or this is going to be your constant power. So for this wiring harness, we're going to connect this red wire to the red and white wire on the aux harness, the yellow wire to the orange and pink harness or wire, and then we'll find a different grounding screw for the ground on the Hardwire kit. And to make that connection or tap in, I bought these little bullet crimp connectors. So, you know, these just plug into each other. You insert your bare wire into the other end here, and then you just crimp it down. If you are getting things like this, which, you know, you can get at your local auto store, just make sure whichever ones you select, they actually like plug into each other pretty securely. Sometimes they can be a little bit loose, or, you know, depending on however many you buy, some may fit better than others. So just make sure you get two ends that actually plug into each other nicely. So if you look here, you can see I've twisted the strands together so they stay together, and I've also folded the end of the wire back on itself, and this will allow the crimp to have more to grab onto and be more secure. So now I've gone ahead, I've stuck the wire in, and you can see I've crimped it here. Give it a little bit of a tug, make sure that crimp is secure, because, you know, you don't want to lose power connection. So for the dash cam ground, I'm going to use one of these bolts here, and so I'm going to feed the wire up from down below. But to do that, I'm going to release these 3 Phillips screws, just so I can, you know, pull this panel back on the dash a bit more and feed the wire. Then we can go ahead and take our 8mm and loosen up this bolt a little bit. Slide the ground wire in there, and then we can go ahead and tighten this back down. It just needs to be hand tight snug. Then we can go ahead and replace those 3 Phillips screws, and those just need to be hand tight too. Now we can go ahead and plug our wires together. Alright, and then obviously we have a lot of cable management to do. So as you can see, I've just kind of zip tied everything to this main harness down here. And this main harness also has these mounts that kind of plug into this back plastic liner. So you literally just give this a tug to pull those mounts out, and you just lightly push it back in order to put them back in the receptacles. For the Viofo, it also has this Hardwire battery protection module. So this means it'll shut off the dash cam when your car is off if your battery reaches a certain voltage. So for now, I've just set it to the highest setting, which is 12.4 volts. These tend to be about 0.1 volt low from other testing that I've done. So about 12.3, and then, you know, if this doesn't provide enough, then, well, my friend can always turn this setting lower to keep the camera on for longer. So now that we have all of our power taken care of, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the glove box. And so once again, you know, we have this hole on the side here that this little key and the rod is going to slide into. But first, we'll go ahead and just, you know, get this on the mount itself. Then we can pivot it up till it goes past the stop on top, and then I'll go ahead and attach that bar over on the driver's side of the glove box. Alright, now we're going to work on routing the rear camera wire back. And so if we pan over here a little bit more, you can see that there are 2 T25 bolts or screws holding this trim to the frame here. So we'll go ahead and undo those. If you want to do it another way and take this trim completely off, there's another 2 of these on top, but obviously you kind of have to remove the roof to get to those. So with those 2 hex screws removed, we can see I'm just feeding the wire in this trim up here. You know, you can pull it down very amply in order to push the wire to the far side, you know, past this ridge here where the indentation in the plastic trim is. So I'm just going to go ahead and feed that all the way back across to the end. And then at the back here, if we pull this trim down, you can see that there's this little plug type thing. It's a little like a, you know, rivet with some teeth on it that just holds this trim piece into the frame. So you go ahead and grab a trim tool, or, you know, a forked pry tool to go ahead and pull this out so that we can take this wire and get it up and over into this trim. On the rear door, let's do the same as we did on the front, and we'll go ahead and release all of these T25 screws so that we can, amply pull down the trim. And then while we're releasing screws along the top trim, let's go ahead and release this other one on this side as well. And there's another one like right on the other side around on top there. Let's also take that. And then for this panel right up here, there's a clip right about this area, so you can just really grab it from the outside and just pull down on it to open this area, and that'll let you feed the wire through here and up and over this panel quite easily. Then once again from the outside, we can reach down, pull this panel open, tuck this wire in, push it far in, and work it all the way to the rear. And once the wire is done being routed over there, we can go ahead and get the pegs and clip aligned on this panel. Make sure this other one gets on the outside of it, and go ahead and pop that back into place. Now that we've made it to the very back, we're going to go ahead and get the wire in between the seam between these two panels, and then we'll go ahead and bring it over to the top and out of the panel over on the top side here. Now before I finish running the wiring over to the back window, now might be a good time to think about cable management. And you can see this is how much extra rear camera wire I have, because going to the back here isn't as long as in a lot of SUVs. So I should think about now where I'm going to put this. So you can see I bundled it up, and actually this trim piece right here will fit this nicely. So what I'll do is I'll pull open this trim piece and I'll tuck this bundle of wire right here, and then only measure out what I need to get to the mounting spot on the back window. Alright, let's go ahead and get ready for the rear camera placement. So I've plugged the USB into the rear camera and its mount because I want to mock up what I'm going to do with it. And unfortunately for the rear, it's not quite as clean as I would like it to be. Originally I was thinking, okay, I'll route the wire into the trim here and then just have it come down and connect to the camera. But this part right here that I'm touching, this is a separate piece from this trim, and as you can see, that gets in the way of the USB cable, and so this will not allow it to the rear camera to stick to the window. So instead, what I think we're going to do, because there is a decent amount of room behind here, you can see my finger, I think it's probably going to be best to put the USB cable in that channel up there, so we can mount this rear camera as high and as over towards the center of the car as we can, so it has the best view. And then to secure that USB cable kind of in this channel up here, we'll use some of the cable clips, right, or cable mounts that came with it. So we'll go ahead and stick these up in this area up here to hold that USB cable, and we'll run it from the side here. Now we want to have all of this easy to access, and the reason why is if my friend ever decides to take off the back roof and back window out, well, obviously he's going to need to be able to disconnect the USB from the camera, so we need to allow enough room for that operation. So if we just jam this up here as far as we can, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. Now granted, this will slide off of the mount, so let's see which side it goes. So he can still slide this off and take out some of the slack on the USB in order to do it, but we want to make this as easy as possible for those events, let's say in the summer when he wants to take the rear top off. So there we go, we have our rear camera placement. Camera is on here. The window next to it can slide back and forth, no problem, no interference. We routed our cable cleanly up above here. We just have one cable mount over here. We'll see in the future if we have to add another one here or not. I don't think so with how rigid it is. And then cable, pretty discreetly just goes up into this frame trim. Now let's work our way from the back to the front, making sure to get all of these T25 screws back into the upper trim. And for this rear one, remember we also took one out on top back here. And then on the front side, remember we had this like plug or post with the teeth that kind of has to go into the hole here. So go ahead and make sure that is all secure. Here's that plug there. Then once again, we'll put the other T25 screws here and secure that. Next on the handle piece, we have the 10mm bolts, right? One in bottom, one in top, that we'll have to go ahead and secure. Then we can go ahead and take the covers and pop those into place. And there you have it. That is our dash cam install on the Jeep Gladiator. I'm looking forward to the trail footage.